is part of the Los Rios Channel watershed, which is just under 18,000 acres. And the portion of that watershed that's tributary to Bolivar Park is about 3,000 acres. So it's a pretty big, it's certainly a regional scale project that crosses multiple jurisdictions. So this here is a kind of schematic overview that identifies sort of the key components of the project. So starting in the top right corner is the diversion system. And we have a picture of the graded drop inlet there in the channel. And then kind of below that, you see a small dam that's actually an inflatable pneumatic gate or rubber dam that we use just for the wet weather flow. Once the water enters our system, it gets routed through a pre-treatment device, which you see at the top kind of center of the screen. It's a nutrient separating baffle box. And then the water continues to a pump station where it's pumped into a large reservoir. And so first the water enters into a storage reservoir, which is 0.39 million gallons. And that is to store water for the on-site irrigation. And then again, during wet weather flows, we have a larger infiltration gallery, which is 2.46 million gallons to help increase local water supply through groundwater recharge. There is an overflow system as well that discharges water back to the storm drain. And then you can see some of the park amenities highlighted here, which includes, you see 3 picnic shelters as well as some improved landscaping as well. So this slide kind of highlights the main benefits, going back to the project goals. So again, water quality benefits. This shows quantitatively the volume reduction and pollutant load reduction for metals and bacteria. And then for water supply benefits, the project is designed to meet 98 to 100% of the park's irrigation demand, and then recharge about 150 to 500 acre feet per year into the Central Basin Aquifer, depending on how wet or dry that particular year is. And then lastly, the community benefits include the new picnic shelters, improved landscaping, and also we added a T-ball backstop to the park as well. And then on the right, you see the photo there, that's a little snapshot of a portion of our stormwater treatment system, which is, this is a pressurized activated carbon filter vessel. And that's all I have for you guys. So I think we're going to take questions at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And forget who the next presenter was.
We can pass it to Danielle.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, hi everyone, my name is Danielle Bram and I'm the director of the Center for Geospatial Science and Technology at Cal State University Northridge. Today I want to talk about a project that our center has been involved with, the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Project. And this is a project that focuses on the nexus between water resources and underserved communities. We have multiple partners on this project. Some of the current partners are the Water Resources Policy Initiative Center out of the CSU system, Tree People, PlaceWorks, and the project is funded by Prop 1 funding through Department of Water Resources. So I will refer to disadvantaged communities as DACs from this point forward in the presentation. As I'm sure most of you know that there are multiple grants and funding resources for providing aid and support to DACs. Those kind of resources help with construction projects, as you've seen in the previous presentations, water quality, water accessibility issues, development of green infrastructure. Ideally, these projects should be awarded in as much of an impartial and objective manner as possible. That doesn't always happen. So one of the things that we wanted to do with this project was get more input from the community about really what their needs and challenges are, and figure out which selected communities are really in need of that type of aid, which funded projects are most suitable and sustainable from a technical, financial perspective, and thinking about all these issues. Let's see here. So ultimately, our project seeks to develop a really robust framework that is made up of data products, methodologies, partners, stakeholders, and activities, so that these projects are ultimately being funded in as much of an objective and data-driven manner as possible. The project area, well, we keep the statewide potential of this model in mind. The focus areas are the 5 counties in Southern California: LA, Ventura, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino, with a focus on the urban regions overlapping LA and Ventura counties. So again, our primary goals are to identify disadvantaged communities, get them involved in the process of identifying these projects, understanding their needs, and developing long-term solutions that are more data-driven and objective. So when thinking about water resources, communities, we're thinking about clean, safe drinking water, flood protection, green infrastructure, drainage concerns, green walkable neighborhoods. Service providers obviously come into play based on their role in management and supply of water resources. You can see this is a quick snapshot of the approximately 600 water service providers that overlap the study area. It's a messy data set. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. The issues, these boundaries are often self-reported. There are significant issues with these boundaries, such as gaps and overlaps in the data. And so a lot of our work has been involved in helping to clean up this data set. However, recently we've become aware that there is a project with the California State Water Board Safer Group. They are taking the reins on updating this data set, if any of you are interested in that. So completed work, we've obviously established our project area, performed data collection, we've done data processing synthesis, and we identified our priority DACs, and we performed outreach meetings. Future work, we are in the process of performing community and agency needs assessments and surveys, compiling additional data. All this information will be going into what we call an MCDA, or multi-criteria decision analysis tool, to help with those community agent project selection process. And then ultimately what'll come out is a prioritized list of projects, and then ultimately project technical assistance can be provided. I mentioned DAC modeling. I can't get into the details on this, but we've worked with a few different models. Stress models, street-weighted models are all ways to identify where DACs are. Currently, we're working on a localized model to hopefully provide more granular information. All this information is contained in the data and all these different pieces of the project. We have organized in a centralized database, but of course, what we don't want to do is just disseminate that information out to the public in its raw form. So we've worked on developing story maps, community toolkits, posters, presentations, and reports and documents. An example, we have our Water Talks webpage, which provides information about the project. You can see the link right here, watertalks.csusb.edu. We've developed a data hub of information for the project. This is an example of the Water Talks toolkit, or one page of the toolkit, to provide information to community members, let them know about what resources are available in their communities, and other information. There is a Water Talks public information portal that was developed for the project. And essentially this portal will really help provide water resources and also provide communities with community-specific meeting information when we were having actually in meetings, again, before COVID. So we are wrapping up our community and agency needs assessments, and we are sending out those surveys to get information back. We are in the process of developing the MCDA, multi-criteria decision analysis tool, to take in all the information that we are collecting during this process and help develop a user interface so that we can ultimately help funders decide in a more objective and data-driven way how to prioritize projects and think about the needs of the community, think about long-term feasibility and maintenance of the projects, all these different factors. This is just a quick glimpse of the MCDA, the interactive map. It's not in its final form, it's still in draft, in draft format, but you can use these different tools to better identify which projects would be coming down the pipeline, and you could weight the criteria to select different projects. Okay, I think I'm out of time. Thank you. If there are any questions about the project, you can contact me or Boykin Witherspoon, who some of you might be familiar with. He's the executive director of WRPI, and he's the main lead on this project. So he's also available to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to Jean.
Okay, great, thanks. Cool. Can everyone see my screen okay? Okay. So my name is Jean Yang. I'm an associate at Studio MLA. We're a landscape architecture firm. And I wanted to share a story about a plan that we developed with MRCA, Tetra Tech. It was actually for MRCA, and we developed it with a team including Tetra Tech and MIG that outlines a visionary, but I think very realistic plan for the upper LA River water and tributaries. So I think, as many of you know, the upper LA River and tributaries, that watershed is huge. It's around 500 square miles, which, to give you some comparison, is around half the size of Rhode Island. So one of the very first things that we had to do was figure out what our mission was. And state legislation created a working group to develop what the mission and the goal should be. And this was made up of representatives from the state of California, LA County, cities adjoining the LA River, community leaders, and NGOs. And these were some of the goals that they came up with that included watershed management, reduction and management of existing flood risks. So one of the first things that we actually had to do was decide what we wanted to study. So as we previously talked about, it's a huge area. So what we did is we looked at all of the 13 tributaries that were in the upper LA River, and we tried to find these metrics that would support the goals. So for example, for water and environment, we were looking at, for each of the tributaries, how much of the area in a half-mile radius was made of impervious land cover. How long were the tributaries? What was the drainage area? What was the significant ecological area? And so in this way, we could prioritize what were those kind of like key leverage points that we should be focusing on. So in the end, we decided the metrics and discussions with the community helped guide us to choose these 6 tributaries in blue to study. I know the green ones on this graphic look a bit stronger than the ones that we studied, because we're really hoping that there's going to be a chance to study them again. And as we were developing the tributaries, I think you've heard from other people and all of today, like all the exciting watershed things that are happening. And of course, we wanted to capture stormwater and develop bioswales and clean it and replenish the water table. But we also wanted to create like a new generation of watershed advocates, you know, people who would be here on this panel, people who would be going to CSUN and learning how to do GIS and all of those kinds of things. And we learned that the community really thinks differently about tributaries than they do about the LA River. The tributaries are community sized, they're small, they're kind of like that park where you learned how to ride a bike. This was a poem about a tributary that was written by a Pacoima resident at a community meeting talking about their tributary dreams. So as we thought about the improvements that we were hoping to make, we really wanted to reinforce that sense of genius loci. So here you're seeing Aliso Canyon Wash, and this is right by Napa Street Elementary School. And of course, you're seeing the LADWP power easement and the concrete channel. And so what we imagined was that this was a space where people would want to come, that the community would want to gather. So we thought about how to modify the channel to create some kind of texture, create an overhang so that people could look over it, create permeable surfaces, have seating so that the Napa Street Elementary School kids could come out after school and discover things, or maybe have their classes here. Have spaces for local vendors to interact and showcase all the things that they're developing. This is kind of like similar to what we were thinking about the Pacoima spreading grounds. It's really like a beautiful infrastructure project. And we wanted to really highlight that in our designs. So we were thinking about how could the area north of it become wetlands? How could it be a place where like the kids come and they catch frogs? Could we create a community deck above the tributary? And of course, how do people get from and to these tributaries? Could we be creating green streets? Another one that we looked at is this space, Boulevard Pit, which is just south of the Hanson Dam spreading grounds. And of course, we wanted this to be someplace that would capture stormwater. But again, we wanted it to be a place that would get people excited about nature, especially there aren't that many spaces in Los Angeles where we can get out. So this is what we examined. We calculated that this would actually capture 6,000 acre feet of stormwater a year, as well as creating acres and acres of new significant ecology and trails and overlooks. So hoping to kind of like hit a lot of these multi-benefits. And of course, we weren't just looking at genius loci. I know that you don't normally think about landscape architects and metrics and Excel sheets, but we looked at wind, we looked at tree placement, we looked at building placement and railways to understand how much stormwater would be captured, what are the significant ecological areas, what kind of carbon sequestration would we have. And then we rolled these all up and looked at how we would be contributing to the LA County sustainability plans. And we were really happy to see that even though we were less than 1% in terms of area of LA County, we were definitely hitting above our weight in terms of green surfaces, tree canopy, protected wildlife coverage. So overall, this plan will provide over 17 square miles of new and enhanced spaces, which will give 1.5 million people access to new and enhanced spaces. That's the population of San Diego. And of those people, 625,000 are disadvantaged.
Look at all the people.
So these, we're very happy to say that this plan was unanimously adopted in April, actually, as we were rolling into COVID. And if you'd like to find out more, I would like to turn you to upperlariver.org, which has a great video. It has the full plan. It has a brief kind of like digestion of the plan. And we're actually very lucky that Brian Baldoff and Sarah Rascone from MRCA are here with us today too, if you have any questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Jean. And we'll pass it on to our last poster presenters, Allison and Stephen.
Well, thank you very much. And Stephen, can you share the PowerPoint? I'm not able to.
Sure. It's saying that host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Let's see. think they might have. I have a copy of your presentation if you wanted to. I could share it and then just let me know when to change slides. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, I don't know if I can go full screen, but I have this. And let me know if, does anyone know how to do full view on this?
Can you go back to the first page? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, we'll just
Yep,
go
we'll
from
wing it.
here.
It's fine. So hi, my name's Allison. I'm the director over at Rancho Los Cerritos, and Stephen Andrews is one of the architects over at Studio 111 who helped us develop this project. The other partner we have on this project is P2S, who's acting as our construction manager. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background about how we got here, then I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to get into the details. So back in 2018, Rancho Los Cerritos received $1 million grant from the Port of Long Beach to fund this project, looking back to advance forward. And it's a state-of-the-art stormwater recapture system. The entire system will use innovative new technology, enabling us to capture up to 140,000 cubic feet of runoff that will increase our first flush storm water capture from 40% to 95% annually. The majority of the water will be absorbed and collected through new permeable paving that will lead to a 10,000 gallon cistern. And we anticipate that this model will leverage the latest in advances in technology and could serve as a nationwide model for water reclamation, treatment, and the use in the face of climate change. So Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you for the details.
Great, thank you, Allison. So our objective is to design a stormwater management system focused on the principles of sustainable and passive stormwater management, while also curating ways to integrate amenity and hydrological function to engage, educate, and entertain visitors of all ages. This approach not only provides greater user satisfaction and perceived value, but also connects visitors to the rich ecological, regional, and historical significance of the Rancho Los Cerritos. So next slide. Okay, so how it works. The stormwater management system consists of two main stormwater catchment locations. First being the implementation of 7,785 square feet of pervious concrete, which serves as the driveway to the historical residence. And second being 6,540 square feet of permeable pavers at the visitor center entry. These catchment areas allow stormwater to infiltrate and then utilize passive techniques to travel to that 10,000 gallon cistern that will hold, filter, and pump reclaimed water to irrigate roughly 56,770 square feet of low water and California native planting areas throughout the site. Next slide. So amenity design is also informed by the site's unique historical land use practices and hydrological processes. This calls to attention the modern and more holistic stormwater management practices that we are implementing. One such amenity provided is the strategically located observation deck positioned directly above the proposed cistern, which allows users to immerse themselves in the historical arroyo by offering unique views of the arroyo's lush California native planting from above. Locating the observation deck and gathering space above the proposed cistern allows visitors the opportunity to experience conditions that are favorable for interaction with stormwater management strategies in new ways that can be engaging and unexpected. So next slide. So here's another section of the arroyo indicating the connection with the visitor center and the low point of the site. Next slide. So as users travel toward the visitor center from the observation deck, they are greeted by interpretive signage and meandering timeline walk indicated by concrete curb steps, with bronze letter insets describing significant historical land use events that have helped shape the Rancho and the greater region to what we see today. So these are basically precedent imagery of materials proposed. It was important during the design process to seamlessly blend our design with the greater existing context. So next slide. And by implementing innovative and functional stormwater management techniques that highlight stormwater as a focal point of beautiful, educational, and memorable experiences, we believe this project serves as a strong precedent for other historical properties. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Allison.
Oh, great. So next slide. So in addition to the interpretive signage options that we're looking at, this is also an opportunity to offer a lot of community benefits through this project. It's going to be the basis of our STEM-focused educational programming, highlighting the Rancho's history and its role in water relevancy. Water conservation and education are a key part of our 25-year master plan at Rancho Los Cerritos. And of course, more importantly, we are an educational facility. So this effort will enhance our educational programming for pre-K through college level learners, as well as incorporate this theme into our public visitor tours. It also illustrates that for nations, the Rancho thrived by using indigenous people and European water retention and retrieval techniques. That history will be integrated into our STEM curriculum. It also is embedded into our historic gardens as a living example so that we may learn together to positively impact the future of how we care about the gardens and learn from them. And with that, we're good. These are just cost breakdowns. They're kind of not that exciting.
Thank you. Sorry for technical difficulties. Okay, so with that, we can start our Q&A. So we have one question. Oh, does anyone have questions from the audience? Or do panelists or presenters have questions for each other? I guess I have a question. You know, we did an interview with practitioners about, and this is kind of what this symposium is kind of centered around, is kind of measuring the benefits and metrics. So I was wondering, how do you measure these benefits that you are kind of intending for your projects? Say, putting educational signage in your projects, how do you, I guess, measure the education benefits coming out of that, or things like that? And this can go for any presenter.
I know at the Rancho, one of the things we've started doing, we'll continue to do, are pre-surveys and post-surveys of people visiting the site to see what they took away from it. And with the educational panels is we can tailor some questions to, you know, what do you now think? What is your, you know, what do you think about water conservation now? What does this project mean to you? To get some baseline data for people coming into the site, and then as they leave the site, additional information for what they're learning.
Actually, if I could also kind of answer that question, metrics were like, I think, a really important of the Upper LA River Plan. And basically how we did it is we developed some goals at the very beginning based on what the working group wanted. They wanted to reduce, to improve the equity and the issues with pollution in certain disadvantaged areas of Los Angeles. That was one of their really like big goals. So for example, when we were doing our plans, we measured, we looked at where there was pollution next to the highways, you know, in industrial areas. We cited our trees in certain positions chose the kind of trees, positioned them to provide shade and those kinds of things. And then when we finished all of our initial like schematic designs, we measured all of those trees and tried to figure out how much shade it would provide, how much it would reduce air conditioning because of the shade that it provided, how much stormwater it would capture through its roots, the carbon sequestration, the PM 2.5 sequestration. So we really tried to kind of like link the beginning to the end through the design process.
Very cool. And we have a hand raised. Brian, I'm going to, oh, you can unmute yourself and ask your question if you like.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Brian Baldoff from the MRCA, and I just wanted to give great kudos to Jean for giving a good presentation, brief of a really big project about ULARP. I had a question for Stephen. I think it was, oh no, for Chris. And so I saw that you had the inflatable dam in your project, and I was just curious to talk about that sort of timeline for that actually to occur. I know that other projects have tried, but not successfully. It's not happened much in the LACTA system. And so I was just curious if you could talk about how long it took, and if it was something that you think will be easy to implement in the future.
I guess, what do you mean by how long it took? If you could rephrase the question.
I guess just what was the timeline of the project, and
Oh, I see.
for instance, like how long was it at the core in order, or was this a 408 or was it just with the county?
Yeah, this was just a county channel. So we did have to go through the county, but it was, I believe this one was surface mounted, so we weren't actually modifying the channel at all to install this rubber dam. We did have some after it was installed, because when you surface mount it, it leaves like maybe an inch or two lift in the channel that kind of holds back water and backs up water in the channel. So so vector control was concerned about that, and but I think it's just with the management of that the city has in the channel, and then with vector controls management, they're kind of working together to make sure that that's, and monitoring it, to make sure that that's not an issue. But yeah, as far as I know, there wasn't really, besides the vector control thing, there wasn't really much issue with the permitting. And I think the project itself was designed, I want to say it was about 9 months, but I could verify that for you as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions between presenters, from the audience? I guess I have one more question for Danielle. Is your tool being used by like water resource managers, or is your project just kind of in the stage of collecting data to make the tool?
So we're still in the middle of the process of collecting data, getting information back from our needs assessments and surveys, and then compiling it all into that user interface that potential managers and funders can use to help prioritize and identify projects. So it's the goal, I believe, is at this point we're looking at March around, and then hopefully technical assistance projects beginning in spring of next year.
Very cool. Okay, if there are no other questions from presenters or the audience, thank you all so much for joining the symposium and in this poster session, and thank you for the poster presenters. I'm so excited for all these new green infrastructure projects, and even just like this discussion around community benefits or all benefits coming from these. And with that, you could leave this room. Oh yes, post your contact in the chat. Maybe that would be helpful for everyone in here. but when you're ready, we can go back to the main room for closing comments.
I have one more question.
Oh yes, go ahead.
For folks at Tetra Tech, I'm curious if you all have worked around remediating some of the relationships that you all have had with community members or communities where a lot of data has been falsified in terms of soil remediation.
I'm not familiar with that issue, so I can't really answer to that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'm specifically referring to Bayview Hunters Point.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Tetra Tech is a very large company, and my the group that I'm in particularly is completely detached from the group at Hunters Point, and obviously that's that's obviously an embarrassment to the company, but we have, I believe those employees were definitely let go, and even though my group's completely separated, the CEO has talked to us about these issues as well to make sure that they don't happen in other groups, and just kind of to drive the point home. So again, it's a separate group, so I'm not intimately familiar with it, and but certainly the CEO has made it understood that that kind of activity is not going to be acceptable. So.
Thank you. It's just I'm a resident from these areas from the Upper LA region, so I just want to make sure that with that history, it's something that is being taken into consideration. That it's a trustworthy group to be doing the work in these communities.
Yes, and I appreciate that. And again, certainly in my group and the people that I work with, we try to be as honest as possible and as transparent as possible with the clients and of course with the community as well, with any questions they might have and with any data reporting and and getting acceptable all the permits we need for the project, and kind of just going down the right path for each particular project at hand.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we can leave to the main meeting for closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.